This year, I really had not planned to go on another missions trip because I thought last year the church was so great raising all that money for all of us to go to Prague, and I thought we'll just take a year off and do it again the next year. But then teenagers brought me their forms saying we want to go on this trip, and I said absolutely. How can you tell them no? They want to go on a missions trip. They want to do something for the Lord.
I was expecting, we're going to do some physical labor. We might have to build something. We'll probably be with a group of school kids the majority of the time.
Honestly, I didn't really know what we were going to be doing up until a few weeks before, and I heard we were going to be working with children a lot, which really excites me because I work with children.
The religion there is, for most of the country, is Catholic. There are some Protestants, but they haven't quite experienced the same fullness of the Lord that we have. They're very hungry for the Holy Spirit, and just...
You can tell from the moment we landed in Colombia that this was a different place, and that you really just knew the Lord was fixing to do some awesome things. I mean, stepping off the airplane, me and my husband looked at each other and said, God's really fixing to do something on this trip. We were so excited.
The first night when we got there, we were all tired. We were running on like 38 hours with no sleep, and we got there and the governor wanted to throw us this banquet.
But he had us all come in, and he had a translator with him, and he was welcoming us and giving us some history and some background on Colombia, and just thanking us for being there.
The welcome was something of kind of a bit of confusion for all of us. It was a very uncomfortable time for me. Being in the military, we got blindfolded and ushered into a room while blindfolded.
Immediately, everybody's thinking, why do we need to be blindfolded? That doesn't seem necessary. And we're thinking, this could be a trap.
And they're asking you to be quiet. They're asking you to take in the sounds and the smells of what was going on.
You could smell the coffee being made, so you knew that that's what was going on. But we didn't know why it was taking so long. Finally, we took the blindfolds off, and they showed us that they had this one guy, and his one job was to make coffee. And he had set up this like small grinder, and they were sitting there and hand grinding coffee, brewing it on the spot for us.
But it's a tiny little coffee pot, and it only makes 2 cups at a time. So 70 of us, 2 cups at a time. Takes a while.
They welcomed us in with open arms and gave 70 people coffee and spent time with us and told us how grateful they were that we came to their country.
The missionary was saying that this is not something that happens a lot, that this is really God opening a door, that we are having an opportunity to meet with the highest people up in the city, that they're opening the door for us.
The governor that night assigned a security detail to us. They gave us members of their police to actually be with us, each group, and that way, when we went out into the country, wherever we were serving, we didn't have to worry about security. They actually provided that for us.
And for the whole week, they followed us around and made sure that we were okay, and that we could get into places we needed to get into, and we had no problems. And it was unbelievable, and it was truly a testament to the favor that God had, God had gone before us in this trip.
We were serving in downtown Armenia. Now, a lot of you parents would be worried about serving in downtown Augusta. All right, increase the population and take away the rule books, and you got Armenia.
This is them saying, we are so glad that you're here. We're so glad that you've come to our country to do this for us. This is completely unheard of. It's something that our country doesn't do. It's something that no country does. And yet the favor of the Lord was with us, and we got the favor of the governor of Colombia, of Armenia, Colombia.
After we'd been blindfolded and taken around to drink coffee with the governor's father, they took us back to the hostel, and we thought we were just going to hang out for a little while, and then we were going to go to bed because we were exhausted. We'd all lost pretty much a whole night of sleep, and we just wanted to go to bed. And then we got back, and they said, okay, you got 10 minutes to go change your clothes and come back downstairs because we're going to have a meeting. And I said, that's a lie. We're going to have to learn something.
The dramas they had us learn were, the people, Angie and Felipe, and Diana, those are the people who were teaching us the dramas, and I think they came up with them. They performed them for us first, and they did a very good job, and then they tried to teach it to us. And none of us could dance, so.
I don't think they were expecting us to not be as good as they were. And so we went in there, we tried our best, but it did not work because we weren't quite as coordinated.
So there were these incredible Colombian people teaching us to dance, Felipe and Angie, and they were just jumping around, and they were awesome. And I was looking at them, I was like, I'm never gonna be able to do that.
Well, I'm a natural on the dance floor, so I wasn't too worried. I was just kidding, I was really worried.
You got a whole group of Americans that have very little rhythm in a room, 70 of us to be exact, in a room looking like fools trying to mimic what Colombians who dance all the time are doing perfectly.
I can't pretend that I was any good at it, but some people were worse than me, and someone's name was Bethany.
Learning the dramas was very interesting. I really didn't think I could do it. I figured that I was going to fail, but at the end of the day, I ended up getting the steps, and I looked crazy, but it didn't really matter.
We almost punched each other in the face constantly because we'd always jump up in the air, and then I was standing next to Bethany, I think, at the time, and Bethany hits me so hard in my stomach, and we had no sleep, and it was just about to not end well. But little things like that made the trip so much better.
One song was about how big God's love for you is, and how you can't imagine how big it is or how big He is. And the other one was about how after you receive salvation, you find a friend in God.
We ended up using them throughout the trip in the different schools. I think we did it about 4 or 5 times.
The school assemblies were amazing. We went in there and got to put on a program for the kids, and they loved it. We did a couple dances for them, and then a drama, which all of them really liked, and they even came up and started dancing with us.
Deanna was, I guess she's kind of the program director. She set up the programs for a lot of what we did in Colombia.
And then to warm up the kids, get them all hyped up, she had them do like a chant where she would say something, and then the next time we did it, they'd have them do something crazy like jump up and down, spin around, jump on one leg, hold your tongue, and and that's what kind of warmed them up to us, and then we'd go into doing the music and the dramas.
She had little cutout hearts that she would say, is God's love this big, like this tiny heart? And they would say, some of them would say, yeah, God's love is that big. No, wrong answer, kids, wait for it. And so she'd bring out a bigger heart. She would say, is God's love this big? And some of the kids would fall for that one too. They'd say, yeah, it's that big. No, it's not that big. It's so big that we can't imagine it. And so we go into our first dance about how big and great God's love is for us, and that kind of gets them really, really excited.
The little kids loved the dances. They would get up, they were laughing, jumping, trying to follow along. It was great. For some of the schools, we got to go out into the crowd of children and help them and teach them the dances.
They were mimicking our students, and they understood the dramas, they understood the purpose of the dances, and that's why we're there. It's not just for fun and games, it's to tell these kids about Christ. And however we do that, that's how they connected in with them. And every one of our students, there was no complaining. It was hot, we were sweaty, and it didn't matter. They got up and they were muy grande and all that other stuff across the stage. It was beautiful.
The drama really, it kind of was universal, because the same thing that happened in the drama also happens in America or any part of the world, probably the same issues. And even though we didn't have to even talk, and it was like the language barrier didn't exist when we danced or did the drama.
It speaks mostly about the choices that you can make, the 2 paths that each of us have in life, straight and narrow, and as opposed to basically being in the world and doing whatever you want, and really how appealing it looks at first and how much it can mess you up.
Well, I don't like a bunch of little children, but they all came at us at once. They would pick a person and huddle around you until you've signed their paper, their arm, their forehead, anything, about 10 times. And by the end of it, you weren't even signing your name, you were just scribbling on a sheet of paper. They couldn't read our handwriting. They didn't know what our names were. They were just happy to see Americans.
When the kids would come afterwards to ask for our autographs, they would always ask the same question: why are you here? I would tell them the same thing: I'm here to tell you about what I have. And of course they would ask me, what do you have? I said, I have Jesus, and I want you to have him too. And some of the kids didn't even know what I was talking about, so I had to tell them who Jesus was and what he did, and some of them didn't believe me. They were like, no, he didn't do that. I'm like, no, really, he did. And whenever they read their books and everything, they would come up to me and they would ask me, how do I receive this Jesus that you're talking about? And then I would lead them through the prayer, and there you go.
Whether it was high school or middle school or elementary, they wanted to know about us. They wanted to take pictures with us. And that was such a platform, because they so were excited to see us, that we got to talk about the Lord, and we just got to share with them, even if we didn't go into specifics. Even if they only asked us, you know, what's the difference between Catholicism and what you believe? Like, what's the difference between such and such? And that to me was really special, that we just got to, even in simple words, just for 2 seconds, got to talk to them about Jesus.
We were able to go into the schools and have conversations with the kids and tell them about our lives and learn about theirs, and that opened many doors for us.
The teachers practically were begging us to pray with the kids, because the teachers were trying to explain certain kid situations and stuff, and they're like, this kid's brother is a drug addict and he's in the juvenile prison, and this kid's brother is in jail or something like that. And they were just going through these kids' situations, and they were just desperate for prayer.
We then talked to them about Jesus, and we asked them, did they want to receive salvation? And every single hand in the room went up, and we got to pray the prayer of salvation with them. And I know that some people will say, you know, they're just little kids, they were only impressed because you're American, and I don't believe that, because I believe the Spirit of the Lord went before us and ministered to those kids and put people in their path and opened up that door, so that when we went up, not just one hand, not just two hands, but every hand was raised, and we got to pray with them. And that was incredibly special to me.
As you know, we did plenty of school assemblies, tons, I mean every day, once or twice a day sometimes. But where I felt, lack of a better word, where I felt at home in my element, I guess you can say, was when we went to the prisons, both the juvenile and the men prison.
We got to lead them to the Lord. A lot of them wanted us to pray for them and pray with them for them and their families, and was telling us how they wanted to change and how they wanted to do better, and how they loved us coming in there, and how it meant so much to them, because nobody really does that. Nobody really comes and shares Jesus with them and shows them that love that they need. And we were glad and just so happy to be able to do that.
Going into a prison, you think these guys are going to be rough, they're going to be rude, they're criminals, so they're not going to be all that nice.
We asked them questions. It was a series of questions. We asked, like, what was the most fun or ridiculous thing when they did, you know, in their life, most embarrassing moment, stuff like that. Then we asked what they missed most outside of the prison, and they'd say, you know, their families and stuff like that. And then the last question, we'd, you know, what do you think about the Lord, and what do you think the Lord thinks about you?
You could just see them drawn and listening very intently at what I was saying, and I used that not to brag about my past to them, but what to then tie it into how my mistakes isn't what defined me, and my mistakes, even though I made them and I fell down in life, the Lord was there to pick me back up, and that those emptiness that I had in my heart, that was only the Lord could fulfill. And I explained to them that, you know, the Lord still loved them and still wanted to be a part of their life, regardless of what they had done in the past.
They were so receptive, and it didn't matter, you know, they just wanted to know about us, and because they wanted to know about us, they wanted to know about God.
The last group we talked to, you know, all three of them were murderers, and all different aspects of what happened to lead up to that murder, but at the end of it, they all gave their lives to the Lord.
Well, the men's prison was probably, I mean, it was a good lead-in to do the juvenile prison before that, because I don't know that I quite expected what we were going to see that next day.
So they took us to this women's prison. It's built for 225 people, and their population was well over 850.
There's literally, just like our prisons, there's different gates they have to go through to get to the compound, the cell block. And once we got in there, they locked the doors behind us.
We had talked before going in there. All the guys who went in there, we talked and we were like, we can't show that kind of emotion. We can't show them that we are overwhelmed. We can't show any kind of emotion like that. We need to be focused. We need to be focused on, you know, bringing the word and ministering, and don't flinch. Just go in there and keep a straight face and keep going and try to minister. Don't make it about the facility. Don't show them that you are intimidated. Don't show any kind of signs of weakness.
So there's really no separation between you and the prisoners. There's just one guard standing to your left, one guard standing to your right.
So first thing that happens when we walk at the door is one of the inmates starts spraying us with, like, it looked like he had a contact bottle, or like solution bottle, if you will, and he was spraying us, and I'm believing it was solution, just solution. Please Jesus, be solution, because we don't know what it was exactly that he was spraying on us, and I felt it, and I'm like, oh God, somebody's peeing on me. I did. I thought, oh great, this is going to be fun. So I didn't move, I didn't flinch, I just kind of got out of the way. And I was trying to tell Mike was right behind me, and so I was like, Mike, I was trying to get his attention, but I didn't want to be too obvious about what was going on. And before I could get his attention, they squirted him, but he kind of had a different reaction. He he flinched, but
And as we walk in, you see these hard people. You see, I mean, clearly it's a prison, but I mean, you see people who are all, you know, uptight. You know, they don't want us to be there as much as we're kind of feeling a little nervous about it as well. But we went in there and we prayed as we walked in, and we went in with boldness and with a look on our face that we were there, and we meant to get the message across.
A gentleman that was from another missions group gave a short little sermon illustration.
So he tells the story of a guy that's going skydiving, and he jumps out of the plane with his parachute on, and he's saying, you know, I'm falling, plummeting to the earth, but I'm all right because I have a parachute on. And so he's falling. He's I'm all right because I have a parachute on. He's falling, splat. It hits the ground. Well, the prisoners love that. I mean, the guy just died, but they loved it because he didn't use his parachute. He had this comforter. He had this parachute. What could have saved him? We have comforter in Jesus, and I think that most of the country knows about Jesus, but I don't know that they have strong relationships. And you know, you're not going to get far with all the trials and tribulations that you have in life without having a strong relationship with Jesus. And I think that kind of hit home for them.
That short, simple message brought 250 to 300 people down. Everybody was just absolutely focused on the word. There was no more distractions. They were very much in tune with what was going on, and everybody raised their hand for salvation.
It's almost like you saw this wave just go over the prisoners, and it's just like they have that hardness, that anger on their faces, and when it just sweeps over, just a whole different emotion comes over them, and they're just totally just focused.
I was praying in the Spirit, and I was saying, Lord, soften the hearts, open their ears so that you can really, speak to them. And I remember I closed my eyes for a minute, and I saw a heart, covered in steel, and I saw as the arrow pierced it, and the steel just fell off. And about that time, I opened my eyes, and that's when hands started going up, and he started praying for them.
It's very humbling when you have grown men, hardened men, weeping and asking for prayer, asking for you to speak over their lives, to give them the hope, pray for them, pray for their families. And a lot of them never get visitors.
And then we broke up into the small groups, and we got to really minister to them one-on-one.
You don't want to be too presumptuous. I mean, that there are people that have done bad things. That's the reason why they're in there. But I really feel like God was changing those hearts. in his minds right then.
You know, we went in there with a heart after each and every one of those lives. And God changed that spirit of timidity in our lives and changed it to a force to be reckoned with. And no spirit that was present in that prison was gonna stay. It was gonna have to flee.
It was incredible to see the responses and to open a new door for the missionaries that are there. They had never been to the prison. Our missions group, the church that we were working with, they had never had that. They only got permission to do it after we came with them. But now there's a new channel of communication. They are excited about going back, and I'm believing that that prison has been changed. I'm believing for a huge change in that general population, and that they can open that new door of ministry and be able to serve them for years to come.
The Children's Hospital going in the first day, or the last day really, which thank goodness it was the last thing we did, because it was probably one of the hardest things they had to experience all week long, because this is real life.
You know, one kid walks in and immediately you see a ventilator and a tank of oxygen that's bigger than this kid. Like literally the thing is like 5 feet tall, and he's dragging that behind him. And it just breaks your heart, because you know, you see not only the kids, but their parents are there.
And they didn't have a room, not a conference room or anything like that, it was just in the hallway. And we set up the speaker system, and Diana, who was one of our main leaders from Colombia, she led in a little drama with another young lady, kind of livened the mood.
These kids that are barely a few years old are fighting for their lives, and there's nothing they can do except for pray.
A 1-year-old that was dying of AIDS, I mean, it just tears you up. Nothing like that should happen. So that was kind of the experience. I mean, you wish you could do more for them.
And it made me so sad. I couldn't even look at some of the children, and they were so beautiful. That's what broke my heart, was they were beautiful. Like, I've never seen a baby as beautiful as them, and you knew that some of them weren't going to make it.
Some of the kids were taken back with John, and they got to pray for some small babies who were on the verge of death, and I can't imagine what that was like. I can't imagine looking at a little baby and not knowing whether it was going to live past the time that we left their country.
It's really a test of your faith to pray for somebody that might not make it. Like literally, this is their only hope. God's their only hope, and if if they don't see miracles and quick, some of them, you know, they're not going to make it.
And to see the hope on their parents' faces. I had the chance to walk into one of the rooms with the sicker children, and just walking in, I saw how the parents, they were so sad, but they were happy that we were there. They were happy that somebody came to see them, happy that we were able to show them the love of God and pray for their children.
You know, half of them don't even know who Jesus is, and to be able to speak to them about Jesus and to share the love of God with them was something that they're never going to forget. And that was probably one of the best feelings ever, is to go into these schools or to go into the Children's Hospital and be able to share that love with them.
And I just began to start preaching about the blood of Jesus, and that the same way that he shed that blood for healing, and he healed many people when he was on earth, he still heals today. And I just began just to plead the blood and speak of the blood. And when I first initially started speaking about it, the interpreter stopped and turned and looked back, I guess to say, is it okay for me to interpret this? And I didn't look, and I was just waiting for him to speak it. And then I guess he got the nod, so he began to speak it. And then you could just see the emotions on the parents' faces and the desperation on their faces, just right away, just like, yes. And you can almost see them like that lifted up once he starts speaking about the blood of Jesus.
But this is the real deal. Like, God, you got to move, because there ain't no singing or dancing that's going to make this situation better. God, you have to move.
As we began to pray for the child over her lung infection, the grandmother grabbed Heather's hand and put it on her right shoulder and began to tell Heather, as I'm praying for the child, began to tell Heather, and it was translated with the interpreter, said, you know, please pray for my right shoulder. My son's a drug addict, and when he comes home, he beats me. And I can't lift my arm up or bend down and lift down, grab something on the ground. So Heather began to pray for her shoulder. We prayed maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. And they were predominantly short prayers just because we had a lot of people to pray for, and children. And so after we prayed for her and the baby, we went out, kept praying for others. And maybe 10 minutes later, we heard this kind of shouting, screaming, and it was the same lady raising her arm up as high as can be, bending over, reaching down to the ground, just yelling, I can lift my arm, I can lift my arm, I can pick up stuff. And you could feel the faith rise in the room. It's one of those things that's hard to describe, but you could just feel the faith rise in that room. And I think everyone else felt it as well. And everyone it kicked it up a notch, and everyone just really then started believing. Their faith the parents' faith rose, our faith rose, and we just really started digging in and speaking into these children's lives, into the parents' lives, because not only did the children need prayer and healing, but the parents needed that prayer and that healing.
We prayed for them, and I do believe that God is, you know, with them and touching their lives even now. But it was a real tough day, but also one of the best days there.
I really feel like it did help. It was some comfort to them. And I wouldn't be surprised that miracles are going to happen in that hospital, in really the whole country.
But these people are so desperate for something that, you know, you're like, Lord, you got to do something, because I can't do anything except for just pray.
You know, I just know that we're going to hear stories. I just know that we're going to hear of miracles that are going to happen further down the road, that God's going to touch in a mighty and powerful way.
The Children's Hospital is just an event that just forever will be stuck in my mind and forever just changed my life.
It was really, like, what you get over there is really good, and it's really beneficial, and you bring stuff home that you can use, and it just kind of jump starts your passion for missions and home missions.
After my first AIM trip, I fell in love with missions. I'm not going to say I'm called to missions, but I know I love everything about it, and I will help any missionary any day in the mission field, because it's not easy.
Before, I always knew that missions was important. I always knew that there were people out there that were in need, but you never think of it as personal. Like, now I know there's so much more I have that I want to give to the missionaries and the people that they're reaching.
The experiences you're going to have are of a very mature level.
What they do is very difficult, and you get to become one of them. You get to become a missionary while you're there. But that doesn't mean that whenever you're on the mission field, your missionary work stops, because it also helps you to realize that your mission field is everywhere. What happens in Colombia or in Czech can also happen in America, and AIM trips really set that in reality for you.